Everdark, Episode 78, Bastard. Last on Everdark, Julian discovers his parents' souls are in Callie's hands. Caemorn claims that he can bring them back, but as he failed to reveal they were still here, Daemon has him imprisoned, and Balthazar is to find out everything he knows.
You're enjoying this, aren't you, Balthazar?
Caemorn hissed from his cage, dropping all pretense of civility now that Daemon was gone. Balthazar gave him a slow, lazy smile. Now, why would I enjoy pulling every single piece of knowledge out of your mind, Caemorn? It's not that you took such evident pleasure in exiling me, or that you killed Julian's parents and trapped their souls in goddamn gems, which has allowed Callie the upper hand. His voice was practically a shout at the end. He cleared his throat and said, "There's no reason at all I should enjoy torturing the hell out of you." Caemorn glowered at him. It was clear from the look in his silver eyes that he knew he had messed up. Royally. Monumentally. And that was not something that Caemorn did. Even Balthazar had to admit that.
What was your plan with Julian's parents? You had no idea Julian was going to become the fledgling of the king, so what were you going to do with them?
Christian asked Caemorn. Balthazar put an arm around Christian's shoulders when Christian said, "I'm sure we don't really want to know the answer to that, even if he would tell the truth." Balthazar had but to look into Caemorn's mind, and he would know.
Insurance.
Caemorn shrugged.
Until Julian and you were no longer considered a threat, Christian, I had them for whatever I needed them for.
Would you have let them go after we weren't considered a threat?
Christian pressed. His shoulders were rigid under Balthazar's arm. He was not willing to be protected against any knowledge whatsoever.
That did not occur, so I do not know what I would have done. I could have released them.
Caemorn said with another shrug. Don't believe him, Christian. He would never have let them go. They were good material for him to use in whatever fashion it suited him. Balthazar said.
Yes, I assumed that.
Christian shuddered.
I suppose I just hoped otherwise. I mean, he is stopping the natural order from occurring. He's not allowing the souls to go on to whatever plane they're meant to.
We do not know what lies behind the doorway.
Caemorn piped up.
We have no idea what happens to the souls there. For all we know, they are transformed into formless energy, no longer a person at all, just material.
The speaker to the dead can know. Lizette told me that I could speak to spirits that have been beyond the doorway. I could call them back.
Caemorn waved a hand.
There hasn't been a speaker to the dead in so long that it's all a myth. And there wasn't one when Daemon was around.
Seer, do you remember what a speaker to the dead can do?
Christian turned to the blindfolded immortal that looked on impassively. She smiled faintly.
They kept their secrets. Not even Eros knew what the speakers saw. There was a sense that for anyone to pass on this information was to know more than the universe wanted us to.
Balthazar's forehead screwed up. You mean like God stopped you? She let out a soft laugh.
No, Balthazar. We do not believe in a Christian God. We have found no evidence of one either, but there is...
She paused, and her mouth worked as if searching for a word. But she finally just said,
There is something. Order, I suppose. In any event, you must not fear being struck down by lightning or something.
Balthazar snorted. I admit, I was going to start looking for those lightning strikes. Callie brings that out in me. But that's just a remnant of a past spent under a priest's tutelage.
You were taught by priests?
Christian's eyebrows rose. Priests used to be some of the most learned people around, Balthazar told him. They could read.
Oh, of course. They were taught to read because of the Bible.
Christian realized. Caemorn made a sound that was somewhat between a hiss and a sigh.
To be so superstitious. It is absurd.
You counted on that same superstition to keep the order in power.
Sophia reminded him. She had been mostly silent up to this point, evidently just pleased to be in the presence of her mistress after so long. In fact, Balthazar just heard a happy hum from her mind. She was not thinking much of anything else. Caemorn's lips pressed together. He did not deny it. Seer, You cannot desire to spend any more time in this terrible place. Balthazar frowned. Unless you wish to be here for the interrogation, perhaps you can be taken somewhere more comfortable. And I can tell that you are still hungry. Seer self-consciously touched the bandage around her eyes.
I did not think I was vain any longer, but now I am nervous about anyone seeing me other than yourselves and my darling Sophia.
Did Balthazar tell you he was getting me 2 kitties, Seer? He's getting me 2! He is!
Sophia suddenly grinned. Balthazar barely repressed a groan. He gave a tight smile as Seer turned her head towards him. Yes, she's getting her fluffy, annoying creatures. A smile played on Seer's lips and she patted his shoulder.
You have a good soul, Eros.
And you are still lovely. Sophia, take her someplace so that she can bathe and dress. I will send more of the disloyal to you both for her to feed upon. Sophia nodded eagerly and took her mistress's hand.
Come, we can go to your old bedchamber.
It is Caemorn's now,
She said with a moe of disgust. Then it is bound to be up to date and very nice, Balthazar said. The man has taste, if nothing else. And perhaps...
Perhaps.
Seer asked. You could take Christian with you? Balthazar answered, and gently nudged his fledgling towards the immortal. Christian whipped his head towards Balthazar.
Why are you trying to get rid of me?
Because interrogating is not very nice.
Sophia answered for him, and took Christian's arm.
Come, you can help me find her clothes to wear.
Christian stared at him. Clearly he did not want to go. Balthazar just stood there, smiling awkwardly.
I don't care if it's not very nice. You may need me.
Christian cried. Balthazar leaned in and kissed his forehead. This won't take long, and I'll be right up to get you. Christian blinked and looked down.
Fine. But one thing. You need to find out from Caemorn how to send David on to the next plane, through the doorway. I don't want to keep him in a gem.
I would tell you that information without compulsion.
Caemorn pointed out icily.
You'd ask for something in return.
Christian said.
We can't afford to owe you anything.
Caemorn was the one to blink this time. Balthazar did too. That's rather ruthless, Christian, Balthazar said with an uncertain laugh. It was now Christian's turn to shrug.
I'm not like Julian about things like this. I understand why certain things have to be, even if they're terrible. Besides, I saw Joanna. I know what Caemorn's done. I'm not even sure he deserves to be here.
Christian took Sophia's hand in his, and between the two of them they led Seer up the staircase. As soon as he heard the clank of the door above, Balthazar turned towards the Cali vampire. Caemorn stared back at him blandly, as if he wasn't in for a world of hurt. Balthazar crossed his arms behind his lower back and began to pace the length of the cage. We can do this 2 ways, Caemorn.
Let me guess. The easy way or the hard way?
Caemorn's right eyebrow rose. I suppose you can simplify it in that way. But in reality, a better way to describe it would be whether I leave you with a headache, or on the floor, blood running out of your nostrils and unconscious for the next week, Balthazar told him. There was a beat before Caemorn said,
You are Iros reborn. Surely you could do it without such violence, regardless of whether I resisted you or not.
Oh, I could, Balthazar agreed with a smile and nod of his head. But it depends on how pissed off you make me. And as you know, I'm not terribly fond of you, Caemorn.
You are still resentful about being exiled.
Caemorn shook his head. Balthazar stopped in mid-stride and used his gift to compel Caemorn to the front of the cell. He saw the slight widening in Caemorn's eyes, but felt the alarm keenly from the Cali vampire's mind. You're not used to being the puppet, are you, Caemorn? You have all the little souls dance to your tune. But between us, you're nothing. Balthazar's jaw flexed as he found a surprising amount of anger towards the vampire before him. He forced Caemorn to stand just inches from the bars. He felt the Cali vampire attempt to move against his will. It took little to hold him where he was.
You like to control people too, Balthazar.
Caemorn pointed out.
You like the power of it.
I actually like the convenience of it. So many people are awful, you see. They have bad intentions towards myself or someone I care about, and I can just make it so they only ever do the things I want," Balthazar told him. He had a tight smile on his face.
So with Roan, that must have just about killed you to not be able to stop him.
Caemorn murmured. Balthazar willed Caemorn to strike his head against the bars. The Kali vampire let out a surprised hiss as blood flowed down his face. His silver eyes flashed, but he said nothing. "Don't piss me off, or I'll have you do far worse things to yourself. Or—" Balthazar peered into Caemorn's mind and let out a chuckle. Caemorn's forehead scrunched.
What is amusing you so?
"You really do lack imagination about what I can do to you. Physical pain, while not pleasant to you, for sure, is nothing compared to if I—" Balthazar looked deeper, and then his expression cleared. "If I unbound Tarn and Farun from you? Or rather, made you do it?"
No!
Caemorn burst out. Then, realizing what he had done, shut his lips tightly as if he could keep the words in that way. "You don't need to speak for me to know what you're thinking," Balthazar reminded him. He felt Caemorn's disconcertion at that.
This is why people hate Iros vampires,
Caemorn told him. "Yes, I suppose so. But I don't spy on people's minds as a rule," Balthazar confessed. "I like being surprised. I like not knowing the depths to which they sink. But you... You think you would have been a better fledgling for Damon than Julian is?" Caemorn's pale cheeks flushed and his lips quivered. These were things he had never wanted anyone to know, certainly not Balthazar, and not Damon. "I'll be sure to let our king know, though really I'm sure that he already guesses what's in your cold black heart."
Do you really think someone as, innocent and unworldly as Julian is a good match for him?
Caemorn asked. Balthazar laughed. "Caemorn, Damon doesn't need someone to make him more of a badass. He needs a person who can connect him to people, to think of protecting life, not simply destroying it. Haven't you seen what he can do? The last thing we need is to have someone like you whispering into his ear."
You think we're in danger from him?
Caemorn stated rather than asked. "I think that with a wave of his hand he turned all those vampires into humans. And he could have waved his hand again and turned them all to red dust." Balthazar shook his head. "He could do that to the world." Caemorn stared back at him without blinking. His mind was whirling through the possibilities.
Do you think that Damon will reveal our existence to the world? Rule over vampires and humanity?
"This is supposed to be my interrogation of you," Balthazar reminded him with a lift of his left eyebrow.
But what do you think?
Caemorn pressed. Balthazar considered whether to answer this question or not. It was none of Caemorn's business. He wondered if Damon wouldn't make Caemorn human and do away with him altogether. Well, not if he can really bring people like the Harrows back. That's too valuable a resource to use. "I think that, yes, knowing Damon, he will eventually rule this world," Balthazar said. He knew this would appeal to Caemorn. The Kali vampire immediately was thinking of ruling his own little fiefdom. He really thinks that he'll get away with all he's done. Fascinating.
So he would need to understand these modern humans. Otherwise, there would be chaos. Unless he would have you control their minds until the idea of vampire overlords would not offend them.
Caemorn said the last with slitted eyes. He evidently was still sore about being compelled to stand there. And Julian as well as Christian are his best chance of this. But Julian is the one he listens to, the one who he can be soft for, the person who can make him see that lording over everyone without any compassion is a bad idea, Balthazar explained.
I see.
Do you?
Of course. I am well aware of my own weaknesses.
Caemorn tried to toss his head back, but failed.
I can still help him. And you.
Me? Balthazar laughed. I don't need any souls to put in gems. Thank you very much.
But you need help with Christian's abilities as speaker to the dead.
Caemorn pointed out. I'm sure I can find plenty of Kali vampires to assist.
But they're not me. None of them are anywhere near my level of skill or understanding.
Caemorn interrupted.
You saw how I helped him with David when Lizette was clueless? She is one of the most powerful Kali out there. So you see. You need me.
I will not advocate on your behalf to King Daemon, Balthazar said flatly. I will not betray him.
No, you won't. You're surprisingly loyal for someone who killed his master. Not that he didn't earn it.
Caemorn added quickly.
But you will tell him? No, he will know that you need me for Christian, and since you are so close to him, and Christian is Julian's best friend.
He let the sentence hang. I think it's time you tell me everything, Balthazar told him simply. He didn't give Caemorn a chance for it to be easy or hard. He didn't spare himself, though, either. A person's mind wasn't like a computer system with thoughts filed away in convenient folders. Memories from the present could be associated with those from the past. Then there would be random scents, colors, bursts of light, things that meant only something to Caemorn. They would evoke great emotions in Caemorn that were unmoored to any particular memory, or were attached to millions of them. Balthazar allowed himself to ride this ocean of memories and feelings. His subconscious allowed him to find what was most crucial for Daemon to know, and that was his memories about Kali. What Balthazar hadn't counted on was how much like Roan that Kali seemed, and how much like him Caemorn was. In one memory, he was in Caemorn's shoes, so to speak, kneeling in front of Kali's throne, the beautiful child that Artemis, Kali, appeared to be, had one leg crossed over the other. He was bobbing it gracefully but negligently. Caemorn had been kneeling like this for hours. Kali had not yet allowed him to stand, though he had said nothing to Caemorn for half that time at least. Caemorn's knees ached as his weight pressed them against the marble floor, but if he even so much as shifted a millimeter, Kali would be displeased. Caemorn had duties to attend to his preceptor, and Kali knew this, but did not release him. But Caemorn knew to speak out of line was to risk his wrath. Wasn't he wrathful now? Caemorn had brought back Tarn and Farun, something that Kali could not do. You know why I chose you, Caemorn? Kali suddenly asked, his young boy's voice musical.
No, my master. Why did you?
Caemorn's heart quivered. Why had Kali chosen him above all? You are so proud of yourself now. Those things that you can do now, like this raising of the long dead and putting them in immortal bodies, but that comes from me, Kali told him. Caemorn wanted to say that it didn't. It couldn't, because Kali couldn't do what he had done, so it had come from Caemorn himself. I chose you, Kali continued on, because no one else would ever have you. You were all edges and broken pieces. I knew you would be grateful to get away from the father that beat you, the mother who had died and left you, your lack of friends, your complete and utter lack of allies. I knew that you would understand that I am the only person who would ever take you on. Balthazar winced, even as he felt Caemorn bleed inside from Kali's words. Caemorn knew intellectually that Kali was angry for him for doing something Kali could not do. Caemorn knew he had worth, but the words were still like slashes of a razor against his soul. Balthazar swallowed. Roan had said much the same thing to him, telling him that he was nothing, that absent the powers that Roan had gifted him with, no one would be loyal to him. No one would even like him. He hadn't believed it, but he had at the same time. It had poisoned his soul. So to see similar things coming out of Kali's mouth to Caemorn was making him surprisingly rageful. You're nothing without me, Caemorn. Nothing, Kali said. There was no love lost there, but sometimes people were weak to those that hurt them. But Balthazar knew that Daemon could shore up Caemorn's shaky sense of self, treat Caemorn in just the right way, ways he could tell Daemon to do, and Caemorn would be more than willing to be on his knees forever to the vampire king. But just as Balthazar was reeling from that memory, another memory caught him like a fly in a web. It was of the Harrow's deaths. The night was stormy. Lightning sliced through the night sky. Rain had turned the black asphalt into a river. Joanna and Jack Harrow were standing in this downpour outside of their car. This was near the place where the car would be driven over the cliff. 2 members of the Order held onto each harrow. Caemorn stood before them. What struck Balthazar immediately was how the harrows were not overwhelmed by fear. They knew what was coming, but they were, both of them, studying Caemorn with eyes hungry to know.
Why must you do this? We mean you no harm.
Joanna cried. Her beautiful face was streaked with rainwater.
You should not have looked for us.
Caemorn told them sadly.
You should have kept pursuing monsters that don't exist.
You're not monsters. You're beautiful.
Joanna told him, and that pained Caemorn to hear. Killing us makes no sense. Jack said in a steady voice that sounded so like Julian's. We're no threat to you.
You want to let the world know that we exist.
Caemorn pointed out. Jack actually smiled. Is that so very bad? Remember when you found out that vampires existed? Before you returned? When you discovered they really were immortal beings out there, what did you feel? Fear? Joy? Awe?
All of those things.
Caemorn admitted.
But there is a reason why we don't reveal ourselves to everyone. I think you two know that reason.
We can prepare the world for this knowledge, Jack argued.
Would you keep it to yourselves? This knowledge?
Caemorn asked.
Yes, if we had to. We want to understand you. We want to know you.
Joanna told him with such fervor. She meant every word, and Caemorn believed her. Caemorn drew out 2 diamonds as large as pigeon eggs.
I wish I had another choice.
Please.
Joanna cried. Don't do this, Jack cried. Spare my wife at least. Please.
No, I want to be with you, Jack.
Her anguished glance at her husband spoke truth too. But how? Jack bit back Julian's name. He didn't want Caemorn to go after him. Caemorn drew on his magic. The diamonds glowed hot white. He reached for the harrow's souls.
Do not worry, I will keep Julian safe, unless he is as stubborn as his parents.
White diaphanous light left both Jack and Joanna and streamed towards the diamonds. When that light filled the gems, the harrow's bodies collapsed, empty vessels. Caemorn brought the diamonds up to look at them, glowing softly in the palms of his hands. Balthazar wrenched himself out of Caemorn's mind. He had seen enough for now. When he was conscious of the world around him again, both he and Caemorn were swaying on their feet. Blood trickled out of Caemorn's nose. Balthazar's head pounded. Why can't you just be a bastard, Caemorn? Balthazar muttered as he allowed Caemorn to collapse on the ground.
I can bring them back. Remember that.
Caemorn gasped out before he fell unconscious. Balthazar grimaced. They needed Caemorn as their ally. He'd be telling Damon that. Join us next time for episode 79, Reasons Why.
We could not do this without the support of our members and shop customers, because the money we use to pay these amazing voice actors comes directly from you. We will never have the backing of a big company like Netflix or Disney. There is no safety net for content creators like us, but on the other hand, it also means that we only have our audience to please. Consider supporting us by joining the membership for a few months or buying an audiobook from our shop. Links to those are in the notes.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.